I've always been fascinated by storms. Ever since I was a kid, I'd watch the thunderheads roll in, mesmerized by the sheer power of nature. That fascination turned into a career, storm chasing. I'd been doing it for over a decade, capturing footage of tornadoes for news outlets and scientific research. But I never imagined that one day chasing a storm would lead to my end. The sky was a deep, bruised purple as I drove down a lonely highway in the middle of Tornado Alley. My weather radio crackled with warnings of a severe supercell forming just west of my position. Perfect. I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as I floored the gas pedal, my modified truck eating up the miles. My name is Jason Marshall. I was born to chase storms, and this is how I died. I had my camera gear ready, every piece of equipment meticulously checked. This storm was shaping up to be a monster, and I needed to be in the perfect spot to capture it. I navigated through back roads, the landscape becoming increasingly alien as the wind picked up and the light faded into a murky twilight. I could see it in the distance, a massive, rotating wall cloud. The beast was coming to life. I pulled off onto a dirt road, the truck skidding slightly as the tires fought for traction. I set up my camera, making sure it was pointed directly at the forming tornado. As I watched, the funnel began to descend, a dark, twisting column reaching down from the sky. It touched the ground, and the tornado was born, tearing through the fields with a roar like a freight train. The sheer size of it was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. My heart pounded in my chest as I hit record, capturing every moment of its destructive beauty. But something felt off. The tornado was moving faster than I'd anticipated, its path unpredictable. I'd been in this situation countless times before, but today was different. The storm seemed almost alive, as if it had a mind of its own. I jumped back into my truck, the engine roaring to life. I needed to reposition, to get ahead of the tornado before it changed direction. I sped down the narrow dirt road, glancing nervously at the sky. The tornado was closer now, too close. Debris began to rain down, pelting the truck like bullets. Panic started to creep in. The dirt road was turning into a mud slick, and the truck was struggling. I could feel the tires losing grip, the rear end fishtailing wildly. I pushed on, knowing that stopping meant certain death. The wind screamed around me, and I could see the tornado looming in my rearview mirror, a dark, twisting monster consuming everything in its path. I needed to get to higher ground, somewhere safer. But the landscape offered no refuge, just endless flat fields and the occasional stand of trees. Suddenly, the truck lurched to the side, a massive gust of wind slamming into it. I fought the steering wheel, trying to keep it on the road. The tornado was right behind me now, the roar deafening. I could feel the pressure changing, my ears popping painfully. And then, the road disappeared. I hadn't seen the washout ahead, a deep gash in the earth where recent rains had washed the dirt away. The truck plunged into the hole, the front end smashing down hard. I was thrown forward, the seatbelt biting into my shoulder. The engine sputtered and died, and I was left in a silence that was almost more terrifying than the storm. I scrambled out of the truck, my heart pounding. The tornado was bearing down on me, a wall of darkness and debris. I ran, my feet slipping in the mud. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to get away. But there was no away. The storm was everywhere, an all-consuming force of nature. I looked back at the vortex, and suddenly my heart seemed to slow as I began to relax, being that this was something I never seen before. The storm cloud was still, as in very still, just in one spot twirling. I stood in a trance, almost fascinated in my 2 years of watching storms. I've never heard of this happening. I didn't realize it could happen. So, in my excitement, I pull out my camera and start recording to capture this amazing footage. I'm 3 minutes in and I notice the winds seems to get stronger around me. Debris is hitting faster and so much harder. I take a look around and look back at Storm shortly after, and it appears to have grown in size through the camera lens, and it was then. Then I realized my grave mistake. The storm wasn't sitting still, it was coming towards me. With every ounce of fear coursing through my veins, I attempt to flee, but by now the rain has impacted the terrain heavily, and I stumbled, falling to my knees. It's not like I had a chance anyway, but I tried. The wind tore at me, pulling me towards the swirling maw of the tornado. I tried to stand, but it was like pushing against a solid wall. The sound was overwhelming, a cacophony of destruction. I could feel the pull, the inexorable force dragging me closer. I thought of my family, of my friends. I thought of all the storms I'd chased, all the risks I'd taken. And I realized, with a sinking heart, that this was it. There was no escape. The tornado was upon me now, the wind ripping at my clothes, my skin being ripped from me due to the rapid moving dirt and debris. I closed my eyes, a sense of eerie calm washing over me. In those final moments, I accepted my fate. I had spent my life chasing storms, and now one had caught me. The tornado was nearly upon me now, a massive spinning wall of darkness. The air was thick with flying debris, and it felt like the entire world was being sucked into the maw of this beast. I felt an almost irresistible pull, my feet lifting from the ground as the wind increased its grip. Suddenly, the ground disappeared from beneath me, and I was airborne. The sensation was both exhilarating and terrifying. I was caught in the tornado's grasp, spinning wildly as the world blurred into a dizzying vortex of colors and shapes. It was as if I were inside a giant blender, everything swirling around me at breakneck speed. Chunks of earth and debris hurtled past, some close enough to graze my skin. The air was filled with a deafening roar, the sound of the tornado consuming everything in its path. I could barely see, my vision obscured by the swirling mass of debris and dust. The centrifugal force pinned my arms to my sides, making it impossible to move. I was caught in a relentless spin, my body flung about like a rag doll. The pressure in my ears built to an unbearable level, and I could feel the air being sucked from my lungs. Each breath was a struggle, the air thin and filled with dust and debris. My skin stung as bits of dirt and debris pelted me, leaving small cuts and bruises. For a moment, there was a surreal stillness at the eye of the tornado. The world seemed to slow, and I caught glimpses of the chaos around me, a car tumbling end over end, a tree uprooted and spinning like a top, a roof torn from a house and shredded to pieces. Then the force of the storm gripped me again, and I was flung back into the violent whirlpool. I spun higher, the ground becoming a distant blur below. The sky above was a dark, menacing swirl, the clouds rotating in a tight spiral. Lightning flashed, illuminating the chaotic scene with brief strobe-like bursts of light. Each flash revealed new horrors, entire sections of buildings being ripped apart, massive trees uprooted and tossed like twigs. My mind struggled to comprehend the sheer power of the storm. It was a force of nature, untamed and unstoppable. There was no reasoning with it, no pleading for mercy. I was at its mercy, a small, insignificant speck caught in its fury. It was then I saw him. It's tunnel vision now, as if the storm wasn't horrific enough. I see a tall, dark, hooded figure making his way towards me, completely unfazed by the storm, as if it were nothing more than a slight breeze. Within his aura, all was calm. I knew who I was looking at, and why I was seeing him. There was no need to give it a second thought. The Grim Reaper was coming to collect. Any hopes I had of surviving this was now gone. Those few minutes seemed like an eternity as he walks closer and closer. The last thing I felt was a sudden, fierce pressure, as if the world was collapsing in on itself. And then, nothing. The storm moved on, leaving a path of devastation in its wake. My truck was found days later, crumpled and half buried in mud. They never found my body, just bits of torn fabric and broken equipment scattered across the fields. The worst part of the story: my video camera was discovered amongst the wreckage by my mother and other relatives a few days later, damaged but still in working condition. The cops didn't want to show my mother, but she insisted. The video captured the horrors of my final moments from the time I began filming for the second time, and it revealed me being lifted off the ground and being sucked into the vortex, where I vanished into the abyss forever. No mother should ever have to watch her child endure such a fate. That's a pain that still haunts me now from beyond the grave. But somewhere, in the heart of that storm, a part of me still roams, forever chasing the wind.